Today we're reading The Great Pacific Garbage Patch by Laura Johnson. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. One small bottle. Suppose that you are hiking along a beach in California on the Pacific coast of the United States with a group of your friends. You're carrying a plastic water bottle in your backpack, and when it's empty, you look up and down the beach for a trash bin, but you don't see one. So you casually toss the plastic bottle into the ocean. No big deal, you think. It's only one bottle, and it will probably float back to shore and maybe get picked up by someone else. But that would be a mistake. Every piece of plastic that lands in the ocean is a big deal. That's because chances are high that the bottle won't end up back on shore. It's more likely that it will begin a 6-year journey across the Pacific Ocean. After floating for thousands of miles, its final destination could be an enormous collection of trash known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. A trash highway. Millions of plastic bottles and pieces of ocean debris begin that same journey every year. First, the garbage is swept away by a current flowing south from the Pacific coast of the United States towards Mexico. Then another current floats that debris west toward Japan. From there, the garbage is carried north and east by 2 more currents. These 4 currents form a circle called a gyre. As the gyre spins, it pulls garbage toward its center. There, the water is calm and the debris becomes trapped. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, circled by the North Pacific Gyre, is not the only garbage patch in the world, but it's the biggest. Surrounded by garbage. In 1988, oceanographers and other scientists discussed the possibility of a garbage patch located somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, but it wasn't discovered until 1997 and only by accident. Charles Moore, a racing boat captain, had entered his boat, the Alguida, in a race from Los Angeles, California to Hawaii, just to test out its new sails. He was guiding the Alguida back to California after the race when he decided to take a shortcut through the North Pacific Gyre. Most sailors avoided this route because there's not enough wind for sailing, but fishermen also avoid it because the area does not have a lot of fish. Captain Moore is also an oceanographer, and the Alguida is a research vessel. As they traveled across the gyre, Moore and his crew were surprised to observe that the Alguida was surrounded by more and more garbage. The water they sailed through was covered with floating debris like plastic bottles, bottle caps, and plastic bags. The surface was also thick with small bits of plastic that they couldn't identify. Captain Moore recalls that he had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Moore put together a team of scientists and returned to the area a few years later. This time, he was prepared to investigate the garbage more closely. The Alguida was now equipped with a special net designed to catch debris larger than 0.5 of an inch in diameter. That's about the size of a cap of the cap on a tube of toothpaste. Surprisingly, most of the debris collected in the net turned out to be small pieces of plastic, not whole objects like bottles and bags. A cloudy soup. Captain Moore's special net picked up a lot of plastic garbage, but it didn't pick up the smallest bits of plastic. Scientists on later expeditions discovered that about 95% of plastics polluting the ocean are smaller than a grain of rice. The movement of the water and energy from the sun eventually breaks plastic objects like water bottles into small pieces. The water and sun then further break down the pieces into even tinier pieces called microplastics. Microplastics floating in the water make areas of the ocean look like huge batches of cloudy soup. And although the microplastics may end up breaking down into bits smaller than a grain of sand, they never completely disappear. In 2014, Captain Moore and a team of scientists returned to the Pacific Garbage Patch to see if it had changed. Using drones to view the patch from above, they were shocked by what they saw. There was 100 times more garbage than when it had last been observed. They also saw islands of trash, some that were 50 feet long, floating within the patch. Rivers and ships. About 80% of the garbage in the sea comes from the land, which waste with waste from many factories and farms dumped directly into the ocean. But some of the harmful substances that end up in the sea start out hundreds of miles from the coast, in rivers and streams. Many of these waterways lead to the ocean, so trash that is dumped into them can eventually become ocean pollution. Rivers, rains, and floodwaters can also pick up harmful substances from the soil, like oil from cars and trucks and pesticides, and then carry those poisons to the sea. The other 20% of the garbage that ends up in the ocean comes from ships, fishing boats, and offshore oil rigs. Sometimes debris gets dumped accidentally when huge boxes called cargo containers fall off ships during bad weather. It may seem unbelievable, but it's legal to dump unlimited amounts of paper, rags, glass, and metal into the ocean, as long as they are dumped at least 12 miles from the coastline. However, it is illegal to dump plastic anywhere in the ocean. No matter where the garbage comes from, the big problem is that once it's in the ocean, it's very hard to get rid of. And that's terrible news for the creatures that live in the sea. A huge threat. Ocean pollution is a huge threat to Earth's environment, and it is especially harmful to sea life. Animals like sea turtles and seals often get tangled and drown in fishing nets that drift into the patch. Sadly, sea turtles often mistake plastic bags for their favorite food, jellyfish. When they try to eat the bags, the turtles often choke and die. Seabirds, called albatrosses, often fly over the patch, hunting for floating fish eggs to feed to their chicks. Sometimes they mistakenly scoop up small pieces of plastic and other debris, like bottle caps. When they feed these objects to their chicks, the chicks often die. Over 250 kinds of sea animals have died from swallowing plastic or becoming tangled in it. Scientists also worry about harmful chemicals in plastics and microplastics entering the human food chain. This can happen when people eat fish and other sea animals that contain these chemicals. Cleaning up the patch. Not all the news about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is bad. Most scientists agree that the problem can be solved. Here's what needs to happen. 1. Prevent trash from entering the ocean. Create less trash or waste. Waste that is never created can't enter the ocean. Using less plastic could make a big difference, but this has to be a worldwide effort. Businesses need to find ways to use less plastic or use recycled plastic in packaging their products. 10 countries have already agreed to greatly reduce their plastic litter by 2025. They plan to stop the use of plastic bags, reduce the use of single-use plastic bottles, and prevent the sale of products that create microplastics. You can help too by using refillable water bottles and cloth grocery bags instead of disposable bottles and plastic bags. If you live near the ocean, think about joining a beach cleanup program or starting one. There are many groups online that can help you get started. 2. Clean up the trash already in the patch. There are many groups working on ocean conservation. One company has begun a cleanup using a system that causes plastic in the ocean to float to a central point, where it is then removed from the sea and shipped back to land for recycling. Scientists are also considering placing ships with recycling factories out in the patch. 3. Teach others about the patch. Many people, even some of your friends and family, might not be aware of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but you can tell them about it. Then they'll be more likely to recycle and to find ways to create less waste. Ocean pollution started with humans, and humans are working hard to find a way to end it.